Hello, today we're going to talk about solving global connectivity, what enterprises are looking for from an IoT partner in 2024. Now, back in 2010, the industry predicted 50 billion connected devices by 2020, but in fact, we only reached about 11 billion. So what went wrong? Well, it turned out that deploying IoT was more complicated than we'd bargained for, and the business justification turned out to be difficult to prove. So, what's different now? I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Nick Earle, who's been the CEO of Eseye for some 6 years, and Eseye is a pure IoT company. But Nick, you've been around in IoT for more than a decade, and so maybe we can start by just having a brief look to see how we've arrived where we are and why you think things are going to be different in 2024 and onwards.
Hi, Annie, and good to talk to you. Yeah, I was around in 2010 and at Cisco, actually, and there were many companies, including Cisco, made that famous prediction. It made sense at the time because we all know that all products are going to become services. Data is more powerful than the actual product itself. And everybody wants to connect every product. Of course, the reality was the complexities were not understood. And there were a lot of problems. There wasn't any protocols for interoperability between many of the layers of the stack. And frankly, with regard to cellular connectivity, the operators, otherwise known as MNOs, mobile network operators, all had proprietary offerings. So, the SIM in my phone, Vodafone, is designed to always connect me to Vodafone. But Vodafone does not have 100% coverage globally, and there are no operators with 100% coverage. So what do customers want? They actually want to have a single product SKU with connectivity that just works anywhere in the world, with no black spots, no outages, and they want it all from a single solution. And it just wasn't possible to do that with all the proprietary components, chief of which was all the offerings from the 820 mobile network operators all the way around the world. And with regard to the business use case question, then because it was so complicated and you needed to be a specialist and you needed to glue all the pieces together, then the ROI, the return on investment on the business case, became a pipe dream. If you wanted an analogy, simple analogy, it was a bit like we were promised cars in 2010, but what we actually got was components and different products. And as customers, we had to build the car ourselves. And it just wasn't cost effective, and very, very few people managed to do it. So it wasn't as we thought it was going to be. And as we will talk in this video, Eseye, and the reason I joined Eseye 6 years ago, Eseye came up with a way of solving those fundamental problems.
Okay, so what would you say now are the top challenges that large enterprises face when designing and deploying IoT globally?
So chief amongst them are the following. First of all, back to what I was saying to the previous question, they actually don't want a proprietary operator solution. They want an agnostic operator. Yeah. Basically want connectivity from any operator. So that means that it has to be the switch, if you like, for IoT has to be agnostic and abstracted, i.e. it has to sit above all the operators and not care. Again, I'll use another analogy. If you think about the airline industry, you can now book a flight on competing airlines by going through the Star Alliance because a bunch of airlines have decided to collaborate together through a common hub. Mm-hmm. So first of all, you had to solve that problem. And from Eseye's perspective, it's the AnyNet Federation. So we have 16 operators all agreeing to enable our single SIM to connect to all of their networks. And they give us all of their roaming agreements. You end up with about 800 networks from a single SIM. So that's the first piece. The second problem you had to solve was roaming. And people watching this video will be very familiar with roaming. And some people will say, well, what's the problem? I can roam between networks. The problem is the roaming agreements are very fragile. There's no such thing as a permanent roaming agreement.
Yeah.
And roaming agreements break down all the time. They're based on quotas. They're based on current agreements, but they can be broken, and they are broken at any time, which is fine if you're only going to Greece for 2 weeks for your holidays. You don't care. But if you've got a device that's going to be abroad for 12 years in a fixed location, you do care. So you can't rely on continuity of supply. So you have to have an alternative to the very fragile model of quota-based, permission-based roaming. So that is also a problem people want to solve. And unless you solve those two fundamental problems, and by combining them together, you enable 100% connectivity, every product at any time, anywhere in the world, people will just not do the project. And therefore, that's why we did that such huge miss of almost 80% of the number of devices that were predicted by 2020.
Okay, and could you tell me, why is the device so important in achieving reliable connectivity?
So at Eseye, we always say it's all about the device. And we're one of the very few companies that say that. And the reason we say that is that if you take this idea of the single eSIM that can connect to any network in the world, then in order for that to work, the firmware in the device, the code in the device, has to be optimized so it's intelligent to be able to do the switch. Think of it like the part of the switch, the intelligence had to be inside the device itself. So if you have a device that just connects to one network, you don't need that intelligence because it only ever connects to the one network. It's like Hotel California. You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave that network. The moment it becomes agnostic, the device needs to be intelligent. And so the device is hugely important because by optimizing the firmware and having intelligence in the device itself, you can actually take use of these technologies, which is, from a technical point of view, is called eSIM, the EUICC standard, and you can actually create a global SKU that can both localize as well as roam. So you can solve these issues. So unless you start with the device, unless you optimize the device, you actually can't achieve global connectivity. The device is hugely important.
Okay, and given your years of long experience, what would you say are the key attributes and characteristics that large enterprises are looking for when they're selecting an IoT partner?
Well, it's not just the connectivity. I mean, clearly they want the ability to create devices that can connect globally, but it's more than that. They want to manufacture them once. So if I just use an example, one of our customers, we do all of the EV chargers globally for Shell. Shell make them in one location in Vietnam, and they ship them all the way around the world. Well, they want to do the testing in Vietnam that they will work in networks anywhere around the world. So they want a partner that can actually help them from manufacturing, assembly, right the way through to deployment. So what that means is that they want someone who has a professional services capability, and to reach back into their manufacturing process to enable single SKU, lower cost manufacturing, simpler supply chain, simpler distribution, and simple installation. In other words, they build sealed products and they don't have to open them up locally and put SIMs in. That means you need a value-based IoT partner who actually has services, professional services capabilities, not just somebody who says, how many SIMs do you want? How much data do you want? Buy it off the website and I'll ship it out the next day. That's a volume game. But what customers want is a value-based partner that can hold their hand and take them on the journey to achieve the business outcome, because every journey is different. So we see it as a value solutions-based requirement, not just a SIMs and data requirement. And that's why our customer base includes some very large companies like Amazon, like Shell, like Coca-Cola, companies that really want to do global multi-country deployments and get to that business outcome as quickly as possible.
Okay, and something that's been a rather difficult question sometimes for the IoT industry to answer is, how should enterprises measure return on investment and value from their IoT projects?
You're right, Annie, it has been difficult. And I would argue that people were actually looking in the wrong direction. And what I mean by that is that many cases people said, well, the ROI is just based on how many more devices I sell as a result of the device being smart. So if a device is dumb, a device is smart, people always like new capabilities. So I'll sell more of the new device. Therefore, my ROI is based on increase in sales. But actually, that is not the ROI for IoT. As I said previously, and I used the example of Shell, if you can have one manufacturing line for all of your global products, you save yourself millions of dollars on back-end business processes. Much simpler manufacturing, much simpler testing, much simpler product management, much simpler supply chain, because you're only shipping one product. You're not shipping one product for the US, one product for Canada, one product for France, one product for the UK, one product for Australia, one for Brazil, one for Turkey. You're shipping one product and you're just installing it. You don't care where it's going to be installed because you know when you turn it on, it will just work. When you look at the ROI for simplification of back-end business processes is many, many, many times greater than the ROI for the incremental revenue. The incremental revenue is almost the cherry on the cake. And the marketing data you get is tremendously valuable, but very hard to put a tangible return on. What is the value of Costa, another customer of ours? Costa Coffee, knowing exactly what coffee you drink, how many buttons you press on the machine, what time of day, which store do you go into. That's marketing gold dust. Very hard to put a value on it, though. But the ability for Costa to have one coffee machine and deploy it anywhere in the world, they switch it on and it works within 10 minutes, is worth millions to Costa. And so that's where the ROI is. And that is where the big companies really see the benefits of IoT in simplification of business processes. And that is, as I said, worth so much more money than just the incremental sales and dwarfs the cost of the solution. And that's why we're seeing huge adoption right now in big companies.
Okay. Nick Earle, CEO of Eseye, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Annie.